All right. So you've heard from Julian how the web generated this abundance of opportunity for creators all over the place. Like they're no longer tethered to publishing monopolies in order to get their word out into the world. And it's online advertising that's been funding this universe of content that otherwise people would not be able to afford to produce or consume. And people get this, like people understand what is at the core of how the web is funded. A few years back, Skype conducted an experiment or a survey of the user base to try to understand the feasibility, the receptivity of folks to see ads being introduced into their platform. And turns out that most folks replied with, well, I've never seen an ad on Skype, but I thought Skype had ads because after all, it is a free product, right? And that was 5 years ago. People got it then, people get it today. This is how the web works. And we've tried other approaches before. We've played around, say, with micropayments, for example, and it also turns out that people do not want to make hundreds of decisions a day on whether a particular piece of content is worth it or not. And that's fine. The problem is that this market was captured by an oligopoly. And it's not just the advertising market in particular, it's the whole internet. Consider how common it is for people to use a Google device that runs a Google operating system, on top of which sits a Google browser. And you use that to use Google DNS servers and query the web to get Google search results, often Google properties themselves, or pages wrapped in Google's AMP that are then peppered with Google ads. Now, privacy-focused regulation like the GDPR has tried to step in and help, and it does some service to user privacy, but it fundamentally misunderstands how network effects work on the web, and the consequence has been that power is being further concentrated in the oligopoly because it is harder and harder for new entrants to the market to come and compete. And what this means for content creators, what this means for publishers is that they have to resort to clickbait to put food on the table. And users? Well, we've had to use ad blocking for years just to deal with what the web has become. And that is unfortunate because, this makes the life of creators harder. That's why programs like acceptable ads or the ability to turn your ad blocker on and off for particular websites exist. Partly due to campaigns by large publishers such as The Guardian, users are becoming more and more aware that they are paying for their convenience of using the web by subtracting revenues from the publishers that they love and that they use. And this is a terrible choice that nobody should have to make. We believe that content creators should get paid and that attention brokerage is the best way that we have to make that work at scale. And not just for the long tail of folks that can't garner enough subscription revenues or donations, but for everyone, because the web should be open and it should be free. We're working towards a data union, and I want to show you why. So most people don't realize how this new data economy that we live in is powered by them. We often think of artificial intelligence as the work of some brilliant magical programmers. And that's often true, but AIs are completely worthless without data. And you know who produces this data? You do. I do. This is our data. This is our data that Google is building an empire on top of. And that's why it's a little disingenuous when their chief economist keeps calling your data worthless because there's so much of it going around. Data work has long been taken for granted. Consider, for example, how many of our political systems used to treat, and often still do, work traditionally expected to be performed by women. The really hard work of raising our children, of taking care of our elderly, of making our homes, that's long been seen as a private endeavor motivated by charity and outside of the real economy, and obviously not entitled to any kind of legal protection or any kind of financial compensation. Remember the Middle Ages? Remember feudalism? It was great. So you had these lords that owned a bunch of land, and they let their serfs work that land, keep a pittance for themselves, just enough to be able to survive, and take everything else. Today, Google and Facebook provide useful and entertaining information services and keep all of the market value of the data that we contribute in return. Contemporary economists call this techno-feudalism. And this fact that this monopsonistic power created by technologies with strong economies of scale, this suppresses labor wages and has for a long time. And I'm not making this up. This was first identified by Karl Marx ages ago. And labor unions emerged as a counterbalancing force to this. A single data worker like me has absolutely no power against Google or Facebook. But now that we know the value and the importance of the work that we put in to make this new data economy work, perhaps it is time for us to unite into some sort of a data labor movement. Because if it is us helping build this economy, then we're definitely entitled to a share of it. Like, imagine earning compound interest on your data. With the Fractal Protocol, we can create a new equilibrium where we can protect user privacy, we can make sure that content creators get paid, and we can protect advertisers from fraud. And we can do this because we finally have the technology. Blockchain provides a trustless, shared source of truth for mechanism design, behavior incentivization, and data integrity. Zero-knowledge proofs and differential privacy help keep the user data safe. Decentralized identity and verifiable credentials make sure that users have sovereignty over their data. And the Fractal Protocol helps keep that data where it belongs, and that's in your hands. It does this by helping you collect, curate, verify, and privately share data about yourself, because your browsers isn't helping you do that. Browsers used to be called user agents, and now they are made by the oligopolists themselves. So if that sounds scary to you, you should probably trust your instincts. Verified data here is extremely important. The content that we see on the web adapts to who we are. And this is because websites use information about you to determine what is the best thing to show you, and that includes ads as well. And in order to make that decision properly and confidently, folks need a semblance of certainty about the quality of these data that they're using to make these decisions, right? Now, personalized ads are a public good because they enable you to use the web for free while increasing the economic utility of the advertising ecosystem that is funding it right now. And verified data commands an immense premium here because, I mean, for all their power and invasiveness, the oligopolists don't actually know who you are. And that's part of the reason for the ubiquity of tracking, because they need to observe your every step to build a picture of you. But by creating a voluntary market for data that is verified, we can facilitate the emergence of a data commons where fair market prices can actually be discovered. We need to decentralize identity and credentials. Protecting personal data is incredibly important to us. Like, we've been a KYC provider for multiple blockchain projects over the past few years, and we've verified almost 200,000 identities. So we know what we're doing there, but we should not be the custodians of these data. The users should be, and we want to help them. We want to make sure that this goes into their hands. The concept of decentralized identity and verifiable credentials is really very similar to how they work in the real world, where you have an authority like a national government that issues you, say, a driver's license with their opinion about your name and their opinion about your address and a bunch of facts that can then be verified by a third party critically without the involvement of the initial authority. So, for example, if you log in with Facebook somewhere, Facebook knows about that. But if I use my driver's license to get into a club, then the government has no idea. Now, by distributing these credentials to their legitimate owners, instead of centralizing them on our side, we can help mitigate honeypot risk that any data vault will contain, while making sure that users keep what is theirs, regardless of what happens to us. And decentralized credentials have superpowers. There's this very cool magic trick that they can do that physical credentials cannot, and that is called selective disclosure. Say, for example, that I want to get into a club, and I'll show the bouncer my driver's license. They're going to inspect the document for authenticity, and they're going to look at my date of birth to calculate my age. This works, but this has a big problem, which is I shared a bunch more than what I wanted to or that was needed for this process, like my name or my address. And these data that were absolutely not pertinent to the process at hand can now be used to discriminate against me. And coupling verifiable credentials with the privacy-preserving properties of zero-knowledge proofs enables us to make sure that when users want to share data, they only share what they actually want to. And we've seen success with several technologies with this, such as ZK snarks or ZK starks or bulletproofs. And by leveraging them, the protocol can make sure that nothing ever leaks the user hand without them wanting it to. Differential privacy is another critical requirement for what we're trying to do here because of something called the privacy unraveling effect. And this is an emerging property of some data sharing systems that incentivize that sharing in a poor way. And this happens in scenarios where the refusal to not, or the choice to not disclose certain data is taken as prima facie evidence that these data are compromising for the owner. So take, for example, a health insurer that charges higher premiums of their policyholders who smoke. A non-smoker that refuses to prove that fact is going to pay the higher premium, not because they're actually at a higher risk, but because their refusal, their silence, is taken as acquiescence. And this is a problem because privacy is not about having something to hide. Privacy is about human dignity. For all his talk of openness, there's no live stream to Zuckerberg's bathroom. And for good reason. I mean, like, you're not a criminal for wanting to hide your shit. It's just nobody else's business. And we're working with experts on technical solutions such as homomorphic encryption and Bayesian privacy. And they're two super interesting methods that we're going to be publishing about soon. Homomorphic encryption would allow websites to make targeting decisions based on your data without ever seeing it unencrypted. Bayesian privacy is a method that allows us to inject a predictable and provable amount of noise into a data set, such that when a website does see your information, they're never quite sure if that's true or not, all the while being certain that there's a certain percentage or probability of truthfulness across their entire user base that still allows them to keep conducting their business while preserving your privacy. We're building this protocol with the help of Polkadot. Polkadot provides us with the best tools and the best infrastructure for us to successfully develop and deploy this. And we don't have to make many of the compromises that we would have to do on other protocols. Their vision is as far as you can get from Bitcoin's maximalism. They see a world, they see a future with multiple blockchains, each unique and tailor-built for a specific purpose. And to enable that future, what they did was to create an SDK for creating these unique blockchains and to provide the infrastructure to be able to connect them and to secure them. Because building a unique blockchain is not only hard work, but also often one of the only ways to get around issues of scalability and transaction costs. Securing a unique blockchain is not easy at all because you need to recruit a network of validators or miners in order to make sure that attackers are kept at bay, and you need to continuously incentivize them. And as Ingo was saying before, by providing this relay chain that these unique blockchains can connect to, Polkadot pools the security that is shared in that chain among all of the other chains that are connected to it so that developers can focus on building their products instead. They can do at the moment 10,000 times more transactions per second than what Ethereum can. And this is critical for projects like ours that require high frequency blockchain usage, because with a lot more bandwidth comes a lot less competition for that bandwidth. And coupled with the ability of the unique chains to charge their own transaction fees, we can make scale not just possible, but also economically viable. And finally, Polkadot enables these blockchains to talk to each other, leveraging functionality in each other, and enabling this interoperability is just creating stronger and stronger network effects. And it's true for blockchains outside of their ecosystem too, such as Ethereum. We're currently building a bunch of proofs of concept and doing a bunch of research that we're going to release soon, but the first product that we're building right now that we want to release will help and incentivize users to provide their data and be verified by an attester. They'll be able to share in the revenues from these data. And we're building SDKs that allow publishers to request selective disclosure of these data from the users. The amount of support and excitement that we've been getting from the industry, from experts, from the community at large has been absolutely insane. And it's a huge source of motivation for me. There's this band that I really like called The Shins, and I feel like they do in one of my favorite songs. I feel like an ocean being warmed by the sun. And I want more of you to join us because the protocol that we're building is humble and it is open. It is humble because we're not tech bros pretending to know what's best. We don't want to change the market overnight, and we know that we would never be able to do that. We're here to listen, we're here to learn, and we're here to progressively integrate into the existing ad tech ecosystem, not by building what we want, but by building what you need. And the protocol is open because we hold no special control over it. We don't charge fees. We don't expect rent. By design, anybody can join it, from users to advertisers. And finally, because just like any other good and lasting standard, the protocol must be conceived as an open source effort that is able to welcome and leverage the participation of many different parties, especially those helping us keep the web free and open for generations to come. Thank you.